without any further ado, so I will have Dr. Acheson come on the stage and share about his background as well as this great presentation he has created for us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Do you want me to use that one? Is that going to work? Where's it working? I can tell it's working. Good. All right. Are we ready, Manish? Okay. So the reason why this is very relevant was we got an inquiry about 4 years ago from a company that was exporting seafood to the United States. And they had run into trouble with something called an import alert, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. They called us and said, we're in real trouble with the FDA. Can you help us get out of it? And it was, yeah, I think we can. But we needed to get somebody on site in India. COVID was just getting going. And we connected with Ranjit. She wasn't working for me then. And we said, would you be willing to go to a seafood company in India in the middle of COVID? And she said, sure, happy to do it. And it's like, really? Are you sure about that? So she got on a plane and she flew here. When was that? That was like
In February.
February 2021.
Yes.
Right in the middle of COVID. And you can imagine what that was like. Tests all the time and masks and all of those sorts of things. After we helped the seafood client, and we got to thinking about how can we support India from a food safety perspective. And obviously we're in business just like you all are. It's like, how does this work? So I made the decision that the way this would work is we would hire local people. That's the only way it was going to work. And I wanted to find smart individuals who could start to build Tag India. And that's exactly what we've done with Manish and Natasha under Ranjit's leadership. I realized that for most Indian companies, unless they are in real trouble or they're really big, they don't want to pay American rates for consulting. It makes no sense. And I do understand that. So I just want to be completely transparent with you all about that. So it made sense for us to build a model where we could have people who are trained in India in food safety, work for us, support you as you need it. And then, as Ranjit said, we have about 30 people in TAG in the United States and Canada with all sorts of regulatory, food safety, chemical, microbiological experience to support these guys. So that was really where we created the vision for TAG. And we've grown that business. We've now got a bunch of seafood clients. We're starting to get spice clients. Not surprisingly, these are the big commodities that are exported to the United States. So we're really excited to be in a big spice hub to try to meet you all and learn more about what you do, and at the same time share some things with you about what you've got to think about when you're trying to import food into the United States. Okay, so let's move right into the presentation. So what I want to talk about is essentially a little bit about how does it work in the US in terms of the overall governance. What do you need to know if you're going to export to the United States? Clearly what could go wrong, because a lot could go wrong. So how do you build a program so it doesn't go wrong? I want to spend some time talking about import refusals. What is the FDA looking at? What are they finding? What products are getting refused? Because it's very helpful to do that and to understand where the problems are being seen. What are the reasons behind it? Some of the extra things on customer requirements. And it would be remiss of me not to at least mention some of the obvious changes that you've all seen happening in the United States since we got a new president. He is shaking things up, and I think it's going to impact the food industry for those who want to import into the United States. And it's going to be important to just understand that. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So as we talk about US food governance and regulation. Can you see that?
No.
The lighting doesn't look great.
Can you turn this light off? One of them. The one is closed.
It's just a bit. Okay, maybe that's a bit better.
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, what we've got, the way that food is regulated in the US, it's all under the White House and under the president. And two of the key departments that deal with food is the Department of Agriculture, that deals with meat, poultry, and egg products. That's all they do on the food side. And then you've got the Department of Health and Human Services. And under them is the Food and Drug Administration. They regulate every other kind of food. So under USDA, you've got Food Safety Inspection Services that does meat, poultry, and egg products, and catfish. That's it. Everything else is under FDA. So seafood, every other kind of seafood, spices, pulses, grains, snack foods, dietary supplements, you name it, is all under the FDA. Centers for Disease Control are more there to just protect public health. They're not a regulatory agency. So that's kind of the basic structure. So we're going to focus on the FDA. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I picked up a cold.
It's a sambar from South India. That.
Yeah, you said it was. Anyway, apologies for that. So I will cough a little bit. So what do you need to know? So you say you are already exporting. What do you need to be aware of? Suppose you are got a company that's very successful domestically. You're looking, perhaps you're exporting to Europe already or Latin America, and you think, what about the United States? First off, it's very doable. I want you to all know it's not impossible to do that. But it's important that you understand how to do it right and what can go wrong. So the first thing that you need to know is to understand which regulations apply to you. Now, you might think, well, isn't it all the same? And the answer is no, it's not. So, two contrasting types of food. If you're exporting spices, you're under one set of regulations, which I'll talk about. If you're exporting seafood, it's a different set of regulations. So the first thing is, well, what do I want to export? And that is then you can figure out which regulations apply to you. And that's part of what we do when somebody says, hey, we want to export something to the United States. What regulations apply? We'll tell you. So the next thing, once you know which regulations apply, you've got to be compliant with them. What have I got to do to follow those rules? Kind of obvious, but it's important. What documents do I need to create? What processes do I need to create? Then you need to obtain a registration number from FDA. If you want to export food to the US, you have to register with the US Food and Drug Administration. That is critical. That is a very simple process. There are consulting companies out there who will charge you quite a lot of money to do that. We'll do it for free. It's not a complicated process. So we're happy to do that for you at no cost. But you do have to do it, because when you send food, a container of product to the United States, you have to tell them it's coming. And it's usually a day or two. And in that, telling them it's coming, you have to include your registration number. That's called prior notice. So when you export, you tell FDA and Customs in the United States, we've got a container on the ocean and it's going to arrive. You also have to have somebody in the United States who is called an importer of record. Now that is somebody who has a US address, who is located in the US, who FDA can contact if they've got a problem or something that they need to communicate with you. And then the last thing you need to do is to understand something called the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. This is really critical, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. So essentially, this is what you've got to do. Which regulations apply? How do I follow those rules? Get my registration, figure out prior notice, make sure you've got an importer of record in the United States, and then understand the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. And we can help you with all of that. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so I talked about in my introductory comments something called the Food Safety Modernization Act. This is a really critical rule that is very important for anybody exporting food. With the exception, there's always exceptions. This doesn't apply to seafood, but it applies to pulses and spices, snack foods. I've heard people, as they were introducing themselves, the things that they're doing. And it covers virtually every kind of food except seafood with regard to India. So this applies to food facilities, as I said earlier, that are making food that's going to be consumed by Americans. And essentially what it tells you to do is you have to create something called a food safety plan. That's what you've got to do to be compliant with this. Well, what's a food safety plan? And a food safety plan is essentially understanding the risks in your foods and how you're controlling them, and making sure that you've documented that you control them in a simple way. Let's go to the next slide. Seafood is different. Seafood essentially applies to all seafood processors. It's very similar principles, and then you have to identify the potential hazards, and you've got to control them. But the details between seafood and everything else, they are different. And if you're trying to export seafood and you follow the wrong rules, or you try to export spice and you're following the seafood rules, you'll get in a pickle. So again, areas we can guide you through which rules apply to me. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the principles behind the food safety plan that I talked about. And I'm going to focus on this a little bit because it's important. It's a simple concept. First of all, what are the hazards associated with my food? So let's stick with spices. Let's stick with black pepper or cumin, for example. The FDA expects you to do the scientific process to say which hazards might be in it. Is it a pesticide? Is it a microbe, salmonella? What risks might be there? Then, how am I going to control that risk through preventive controls? Then I have to monitor to make sure that my preventive controls are working. Every time I make a batch, are they working properly? If they don't work properly, what's the corrective action to address that? I have to verify that this process is working every batch I make. And periodically I have to reassess the program to make sure that it's working properly. And all of this needs to be written down and captured and recorded. Because if you were to get an FDA inspection, they may say, I want to see your food safety plan. And you say, well, we've got a risk. It might be salmonella in pepper. And they're going to say, how do you control that? And prove to me that you control it every batch that you make. So record keeping is a very important part of this. But that's the principles behind the food safety plan. Let's go to the next slide, Angie. Okay, so we talked about the hazards. You need to think about chemical hazards with things like pesticides, heavy metals, and allergens. Allergens do fall under this. And again, I know in India, allergens are not a big deal at the moment. I think it's moving that way, but they're not nearly as important as they are in the United States. The commonest cause of a recall in the United States is an allergen problem. It's not microbes, it's allergens. So peanuts, tree nuts, sesame, they're all allergens, egg, milk, wheat, seafood. Second risk is physical risks, like metal and foreign material. And then the third risk are bugs, biological hazards, like salmonella. So as we're thinking about our hazard analysis, we have to think about chemical, physical, and microbiological. And again, this is a process that one lays out, and it's important to document it. And again, should you need help doing this right, we can help you. Okay, next slide. There is now a new rule that's going to impact companies, and it's called the traceability rule. This has got a lot of details in it, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the traceability rule, but this rule is going to come in effect in January next year, January 2026. Now that might change with the new administration, but currently it is scheduled to be a requirement then. It does not apply to all foods, only to certain foods. And over here, which is very difficult to read, there is a list of the foods that it applies to. And again, if you're wondering whether the food you're making or the product you're making are subject to this, ask us, and we'll help you figure it out. So this is essentially, it is complicated, and it requires you to keep information about where the individual ingredients came from, and what you did with it, and where you shipped it. Again, it's not conceptually, it's not difficult to figure out how to do it, but like everything else to do with FDA, you've got to do it right. And it's something to be aware of that is coming. And some companies that some of you may work with or like to work with, like Walmart, like Kroger, like Costco, are requiring it for everything. They're not just requiring it for ones that the FDA wants it to be focused on. So let's move to the next one. All right, so these are some of the things to think about. These are the regulations to be thinking about. This is the process to be thinking about. Well, what happens when my food arrives? I've done all that. I think I've done it all right. I've got my registration set. I've got the shipment. It's just arrived. Well, the good news is that only about 2 to 5% of imported goods are going to be inspected by FDA. It's not. Some people think it's everything. It's not. They do it based on risk. And I hate to tell you all, but spices are high risk. So they do focus on spices quite a bit. So maybe 5% of spices get stopped and tested, if that. Now if you're exporting any USDA products, remember meat, poultry, egg products, that's 100%. It's a big difference. Now, if they find a problem with products, they refuse entry because the product arrives at the port and it sits there before it's cleared to enter into the United States. You can't just import it. It has to sit there and it has to be cleared by customs and by FDA. And that doesn't usually take but a few days if everything's working properly. But if they say, we don't like what we've got here, then they can refuse it. And I'm going to talk in a minute about what type of things get refused. Companies I mentioned this earlier, which was our first engagement. Companies may be placed on an import alert. I'm going to explain in a minute more about what that is, as well as other things. So there's quite a lot of things that the FDA can do. Let's assume that it's all working okay. We'll get to where it goes wrong in a minute. But let's assume it's all working okay. I want to talk now about this thing called the Foreign Supply Verification Program. This is, again, it was part of the Food Safety Modernization Act. And remember, I said, if you're making a food in India, spice, let's say, we'll stick with that. You're making your black pepper, you've registered, you've shipped it, it's all good. Somebody in the US has caused that food to be imported. There's an entity there, it might be an importer, it could be a manufacturer, it could be a retailer, are saying, yeah, we want some of your product, we want it. They have to take the trouble to essentially create a program called Foreign Supply Verification. And what that is that this importer in the United States, an FSV person is in the US. That's essentially where the contact needs to be. And they have to verify, the importers, that you're doing the job right, that you are following the rules. The responsibility is on the importer to check up to make sure you're doing it right. So it gets a little confusing. It's not just the manufacturer in India. There's an entity in the US that is required to follow the Foreign Supply Verification Program. So importers have to verify that the foreign manufacturer is indeed essentially controlling risks that we talked about, like the chart I showed with the hazard analysis. And importers must verify that the suppliers are meeting all these regulatory requirements. FDA has got very focused on foreign supply verification over the last 2 or 3 years. They're doing a lot of inspections around that. So it's not you that's getting inspected, it's your importer. But if the importers don't have it right, it comes back and it can reflect badly on the manufacturers in India. So again, this is an important part to understand. And I know this is fairly complicated, and I'm giving you the overall view of how this all works. But again, if you are exporting or you're interested in exporting, then we're happy to sort of take you through these things in a lot more detail. So let's look at the next slide. All right, so what can go wrong? And I can guarantee if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So I talked a little bit about refusals. So essentially, FDA inspects your product, they look at it, and they say, this is not meeting our regulations. Now, how would they know? Well, they may look at the label on the product and say the label's not right. Or they may test the product and say, we found bacteria in there like salmonella. Or we found what's called filth. That's a word that's used a lot by FDA. And that basically means insect parts, insects, dirt, bits of twigs, just that it's not fit for food. It's dirty. So this is the first thing that can go wrong. And I'm going to show you some information on the number of refusals in a minute, because it's pretty common. If you get a refusal or something goes wrong, then the next thing that can happen is you'd be put on an import alert. And an import alert is a very important thing to understand, because it has significant financial impact on you. As I said, ordinarily, if you ship food in a container to the US, it arrives, it passes, and if it's all good, it's into commerce within a matter of days. If you're on an import alert, when that product arrives in the United States, it is held at the port. A third-party lab has to come and test it. And once that result is available, it's sent to FDA, and FDA says, yeah, it's okay, and it's released. I'll get a bit more into this in just a minute. But because of that, the product sits there for a long time, and it introduces significant cost to you. Recalls, obviously, that if FDA discovers that this product in the marketplace that's a problem, you may end up having to recall it. There is an FDA office in India, as you probably all are well aware, and FDA has the authority to come and inspect you. If you're exporting food to the US, the FDA can come and look at your plant, look at your facility, and look at your records. And one of the things that I've learned since working with Indian companies is many of them are BRCGS certified, which is part of the Global Food Safety Initiative. And we've certainly met companies who say, well, we're BRC certified, we're good to go, we're meeting regulatory requirements. And the answer is it's not the same as FDA. It's a good thing to have, it gets you there, but they are not the same. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so the consequences of exporting product that isn't meeting the regulations. Essentially we've talked about some of them. It can escalate up to warning letters, they can detain the product, they can seize it, they can mandate recalls, they can suspend your registration, even get to the point where there's criminal investigations. So FDA has a lot of authority. And if you get into any of this, it's very expensive, very tedious, very difficult, and it goes right back to where we're trying to start, isn't it? Let's do it right in the first place. Let's understand what we need to do and get it right. It's not that difficult. And a lot of companies don't take the trouble to try to get it right. They think, oh, this is easier, just export, because nice margins. All right, let's go to the next slide. So, things that get refused. Spend some time talking about that. This is a list that in fact, Manish has done a lot of work pulling these together, and much of the data I'm going to share with you in the next few slides were pulled together by him. So, for example, sesame seeds with salmonella. That's a very common one. Mangoes, pesticide, shrimp, filth, and salmonella. Spices, misbranding and salmonella. Fried snack foods, misbranding. Whole black pepper, filth and salmonella. Tamarind, filth. Just an example of the types of common refusals that we see in the US. So let's go to the next slide and dig into this a bit more. The two big areas are where it's adulterated, filth, salmonella, pesticides, unsafe food color additives, or misbranding, which means the label isn't right. And that's an important one. The ingredient list is incorrect, There's allergens and labeling that's not correct, or there's an unapproved color, for example. So all of these things can catch you out if you don't follow the rules and know what to do to avoid them. So how common are import alerts? Well, this gives you about 10 years of data from August 2014 through to August 2024. And you can see here, adulteration, there were almost 10,000 refusals because of adulteration. That's the most common. 63% of refusals were due to adulteration. And that's the things I'm talking about. That's salmonella, it's filth, it's things like that. Labeling mistakes, close to 5,000 on top of that. So that's another huge one. Unapproved new drugs is not relevant to foods. And then the last one is that we've got on here is non-compliance with the foreign supply verification program, in which we've got about 140. And that number is only going up. But I just want to impress on you the size of these numbers. This happens a lot. So let's go to the next slide. This is a complicated slide. I know you can't see it all, but I want to just call out a couple of points. Again, we have got, up here, we've got different types of food products. So up at the top there, in row 1, is spices. And again, this is 10 years of data. So if you look at spices, out of all the refusals, there were just over 1,000 that were due to the finding of salmonella in the spice. There was close to 600 with filth. I'm up here on the top line. So you can see that spices are at the top of the list. And in fact, over there on the far side of the slide, you can actually see where they came from. What part of the country is the highest risk? Gujarat is up there, unfortunately, with the spices. Not surprising because a lot of spices come out of Gujarat again. But the spice industry is critical to the United States, but it's a big focus for FDA because they know there can be problems with it. We won't go through the rest of this, but I'm happy to share this slide with you if you'd like, and you can look at it in more detail. There's just a lot of detail on it, but I wanted to put it in there to point out that spices are way up there. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, so again, looking now at more recent data, we look here in the latter part of last year, so May through to August 2024, which is the most recent data that we could get from FDA, month by month. Here's what we're dealing with: 69, 68, 103, 64. So this is the number of refusals per month from India. This is not all the world, it's just India. So you can see here that every twice a day over the course of a month, there's a refusal. That's a lot. Now there's a lot of product coming in, I get that. But there is a lot of refusals. Salmonella, pesticides, filth, or unsafe colors. Let's go to the next slide. This is just a different way of looking at the data. Again, it's the same May, June, July, and August from last year. And you can see here that the processing failures are high as we work across this month over month. Again, happy to share this with you so you can look at it in more detail. But we've got adulteration and misbranding. That's where the label's not right. So you think, well, the label isn't a problem. Well, it can be a problem. And it's a common cause of refusals. The point of me showing you all this information is that refusals are common and they're significant. And refusals, if they happen repeatedly, can lead to an import alert, which is really what we want to avoid. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so violations. Things that go wrong, failing to understand what you have to do. That's a common reason. You don't understand the regulatory requirements. It goes back to what I said earlier. Your food safety plan isn't working. Your sanitation standards are not good enough. You don't have good environmental control programs, which is keeping salmonella, for example, out of the food after you process it. You don't have good root cause analysis. There's no effectiveness checks. These are all some of the details that FDA will pick up on when things go wrong. So once again, these are all avoidable if you know what you're doing. And a big part of what we do is help companies understand what they've got to do and meet those regulatory requirements. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so import alerts. I keep talking about them. They are really very, very costly to food companies. So this is something, another name that goes for import alert is something called a detention without physical examination. So if you are on an import alert, you can find companies named on FDA's website, which is important because the information, if you get put on an import alert, in the United States, it's public information. Anyone can find it. And many large customers in the US are scanning import alerts all the time. And if you get put on there, they'll say, hey, I see you're on an import alert, what's going on? So they may know and cause a problem for you. And this means that the FDA just holds the product and doesn't let it move. It has to be tested by a third-party lab, as I said, and I'm emphasizing this. So it arrives at the port, it's put in a warehouse, it sits there. A third party, not you, not FDA, you have to pay for somebody to come in and test it, take it to the lab, take the sample to the lab, do the test, send that result to the Food and Drug Administration, who will then review that and make a decision of, no, we're not letting this in, or it's free to go. And if they're looking for salmonella and the test is negative, they'll say it's good to go. If they find salmonella in it, refused. Now this can take weeks, so you may have products sitting in the warehouse for 2 months, which is very, very costly. Plus you pay for all the testing. So again, this is just a challenge. Now you're thinking, well, I don't want to do this because if I get it on an import alert, it's going to be a real problem. It is a problem, but again, part of what we do is help companies get off import alerts when they have got on them. We prefer to not let you get on it in the first place to build good programs, but if it happens, we can work to help get you off it. And we've been successful doing that on multiple occasions. Let's go to the next slide. All right, layered on top of all of this is sometimes customers require extra levels. And for example, metal detection for foreign material. Most companies have it. But there are certain retailers in the US that are now saying we want X-ray detection as well as metal detectors. That's part of what they require you to do. And we've worked with companies who have fallen under that requirement and been able to convince the retailer that actually the controls are good and you don't need both. But foreign material controls, pest controls, traceability, exercises, these are things that get layered on top. And again, if you're dealing with a particular customer, if you need help to understand what they want, we can help you there too. It's not just the FDA regulations. Let's move to the next slide. All right, moving towards the end here. We're almost at the end of the presentation. But I did want to just touch on the obvious changes in the United States. All of the things I've been talking about were put in place originally. The laws were signed into place in 2011, the Food Safety Plan. They became a requirement in 2016, and they've been a focus now for almost 10 years. Everybody knows that we've got a new president in town in the United States because he's making a lot of noise and he's stirring up a lot of anxiety in some, excitement in others. But he's making a lot of noise. And one of the things that Trump ran on for his election was this: make America healthy again. And the biggest advocate for that is a gentleman called Kennedy, RFK, Robert Kennedy, part of the Kennedy family. And I won't get into the American politics, but he and Trump got together and they said, we need to make America healthy again, which means we need to, how do Americans get healthy? Well, they eat the right food. And Kennedy is now going right back to that first or second slide I showed you. If you remember, one of the departments that deals with food is the Department of Health and Human Services. And under that was FDA and CDC. Kennedy is now running Health and Human Services. So the Food and Drug Administration is under Kennedy. So what does that mean? Well, essentially, he can drive change within the Food and Drug Administration to some degree. And where he's going is he's focusing on additives and chemicals, heavy metals. That's where he's going. He believes that we need to reduce these things in the food supply. And one of the things he said was, in the United States, we allow thousands of food additives, and the Europeans don't allow them. And if you're in the spice industry, one of the things is ethylene oxide, as an example. The spice industry uses ETO. It's not allowed in Europe. It is allowed in the US. That's an example where Kennedy may say, if it's not allowed in Europe, we're not allowing its use in the US either. And he has the authority to do that. So we're going to see a lot of change. We're going to see a lot of things that are going to get shaken up. So there's lots of things that you need to keep track of. Again, we do that. We watch what they're doing. We write newsletters every week. And again, if you're interested in subscribing to those, it's not going to cost you anything, and we'll help keep you current. So whether you use our services or not, you can have a free insight as to what's going on in the US. Because there's a lot of things going on, and I can anticipate a lot of changes. All right, let's go to the next slide. So just wrapping up here. It goes right back to where I started with my introduction. Risk-based preventive controls. That's what we need to be all thinking about. Where are the risks in my products? Spices, seafood, cereals, snacks, whatever it is. Where are the risks and how am I controlling them? That is the principle that we need to be thinking about. It's good practice, it's good business practice as well. There is a heavy burden on importers. And essentially, foreign firms are held to the same standard as domestic firms. If you're making food in India, Gujarat, you're selling it in the United States, you are held to exactly the same standard as a manufacturer in the United States. And that essentially requires you to be compliant with all of the things that we've talked about. So understanding, again, going back, what do I have to do to be compliant and how do I get there? That's a big part of what we do on an everyday basis. So this compliance part is really important to allow you to maintain the ability to continue to sustain your exports. This is all prevention, but things do go wrong. However good you are, however clever your systems are, we all know in the food industry or the dietary supplement industry, stuff goes wrong. It just does. You cannot stop it 100%. And when they do, they can have a significant business impact. And again, part of what we do is we work with companies to help manage that. If something goes wrong, we're here to help figure out how do we get out of this mess. So first of all, we're about prevention, but recognizing that when things go wrong, they go badly wrong and they're very costly. And your customers in the United States get unhappy, and you lose business and you lose money, and ultimately at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. We're in this to run a business. So that's essentially the general approach to managing, get ready, figure out what you're going to do it right, and know that one day something's going to go wrong and have a resource to help you get out of the pickle when that happens. I think that's the end of my part, and you were going to talk a little bit about some of our services.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you.
All yours.
Thank you, Dr. Devi. So just to build on what TAG can help, and there's just many folds here, so everyone's needs are different. So we can see understanding the regulatory requirements. If you're talking about industry where you are doing spices and you are having certain other commodities, there are mostly regulation interpretation and what are the regulations applicable to your business. If you are importer by yourself or you have somebody handling the importer system in the US for you. So There are so many different variables there, so we can help you to understand that. How we will do it? Because we know the needs of Indian exporters, because we have done the work with them. We have full-time people in India here, so we can set up webinars, online education seminars, or we can set some specific required trainings. So this is something which we can think about combining together all the spice people together and get one FDA refresher, regulations applicable to your business. So something like that is similar to something about if we can capture something in dietary supplements as well. The second one is regulatory and customer compliance. As Dr. David said, we do have a proper communication team whose mandate is to keep an eye and publish the information in the newsletters, which is very up to date, and it's free to subscribe. That gives us a kind of staying abreast of the regulations, and that we can actually help you to be on top of that. You can subscribe to those. Customer requirements, like you are not only dealing with FDA, which is a major thing is FDA, who will open the gate for you guys, but at the same time, what are the Costco requirements? What are the Kroger's requirements? You are trying to get to the specific retailer, what are those requirements? So because we work with those clients, we do have a larger portfolio in the US. So we actually have more information about what are their expectations from the suppliers. So we can help on that. When something, if something goes wrong, then what we can help is doing a gap assessment. Things are running perfectly, but then there is one container gets spot checked and found salmonella in the product or filth in the product. That will lead into you a response to FDA. So in order to get you pass through this situation, we can actually do the gap assessment on your site. The beauty of having our team on the ground is they can visit. They can actually look into where the problems are. We really wanted to solve the problem in the real way. I know India is all about managing auditors, managing inspectors. You know what? How far you can manage. We want to do it right. This will help save money and loss the waste, because waste is when your containers are stuck for 6 months. Every day we are paying double charges. You cannot sell. Your customer is upset. Your brand is at risk. So in order to do it right, we have to do it right from the ground. So cost of throwing the spice or stuff, like I just like me said in Hindi, अगर हम अपने घर में इसको ठीक करके भेजें, तो वो ज़्यादा अच्छा है जाके किसी और कंट्री में आपका प्रोडक्ट वहाँ पे गोदाम में पड़ा हुआ है, किसी के मुंह में नहीं जा रहा वो वहीं पे पड़ा है, क्योंकि एक सैंपल उसमें सामने आ गया, तो वो आपके ऊपर जो आपका जो प्रोसेस हो वो लेंथी हो जाता है to remove that. So my vision is that we have to do it right from here, and it won't help if we say things like we can change the way we send, or we wanted to do something like temporary shift. There's no band-aid solution in the food safety. Food safety it should be done from the mindset to the real world. That will give you loss of the opportunity to waste. Brand reputation will be saved. You will have a peaceful sleep that our product is in good change going on. One more thing is about import and export in terms of if you are new, you wanted to export, and you think BRC is the audit is done, you are AA star plus, and that you are ready. BRC is not FDA gateway to go right there, because BRC is really a bare minimum system. FDA requirements are different. So understanding the requirements. So what we are very committed to actually host some of the education sessions or some kind of webinars, which we did started in India level. So that will help us to help you to understand what are your needs. If you are new, you are desperate to export, call us. We can come and we can do a run through the whole system you have and give you a list. Not only giving you a list what you need to have it, we can help you to put in place. And that's all about food safety plan that Dr. David has shown, the hazard analysis, the identifying the hazards and putting the controls in place and all. Crisis management. Things can happen, like some customer at the US found a customer complaint and that leads into a recall. Or something happened that your product is under the further investigation while it's in the commerce in the US. We can help navigate that as well. So our goal is to have the compliance promotion to educate कि कौन सी regulation, कौन सा law है जो हमें follow करना है. दूसरा है कि उसको कैसे implement करना है. फिर उसके बाद उसको continuously we have to keep the same way. फूड सेफ्टी ऐसा नहीं है कि आज हमने बत्ती जगा दी और बाद में बंद कर दी, ऐसा नहीं होता. इट हैज टू कंटिन्यूअसली एंड ग्रोइंग इन द कंटिन्यूअस इंप्रूवमेंट. सो my vision and my boss's vision is to help exporters, and I have a very committed team here with us, very intelligent folks, fully trained and backed up by 30 other experts sitting in the North America. So we are really looking forward कि हम आपकी help कर सकें. So after all this, I can अभी मैं बस चुप कर जाती हूँ और तुम लोग आप बताइए कि कोई question है तो we can open up for the questions. Thank you very much. Questions? Questions, Rick?
Hello. Madam, we are already in the industry now.
Yes.
Okay. The subject what we are discussing is what kind of the problem will be there, food items especially, once the product will arrive to USA.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it would be better that instead of going to the end of this problem, how to start and initiate it, motivate it.
Mm-hmm.
See, we are the people from the different kind of the industries. Now, see, the rules are there. We know very well the pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, everywhere the more or less this kind of the rules are there. But which way initiation should be taken that we can think positively to go for the food product and for the entry in USA and Canada. So that part is little bit missing in the seminar. We want that initiative to give us the push to the industry. We are capable to do it, but we need some guidance that these are the good industries, these are the prospects are there for the food, spices, you can do it and you can start like this. So, see, these are the problem where the already industry is there and they are doing export in USA, they are facing the problem. We people are not like that, we have a dream to reach in USA. So, that would be better if you can highlight the point.
I think you're referring to companies that are not currently exporting, but they would like to. Well, I think there's a couple of parts to that. The first is understanding what the market looks like in the United States. So if you were to export, how would you do that? Do you go through a brokerage? Do you find individual clients in the United States? And the large exporters will sell directly to Costco or to Walmart. The small ones, no. In order to do that, you've got to understand the American market in terms of how do you enter as a new supplier. I think it's a very good question. It's not what we work on specifically in terms of trying to create those markets. companies.
May I interrupt you, sir?
Please.
I just got the point that you say that Costco and Walmart. See, for us, it is very important that in Costco, I visited in US in Costco, the huge stock of nutraceuticals products they are selling. Huge.
Yes.
And we have a dream that we can make it, we can produce it, we can reach there. But where is the gate to meet the Costco? Where is the gate for the Walmart? So, see, that's very important. Where should we enter?
Well, again, I think it goes into working with somebody in the United States who knows how to set up the conversations for you to have with the buyers with these big companies in the United States. Unfortunately, that's not what we do. But what I think is important is the buyers are going to say, well, what are you selling? And they start to ask, well, what's the quality? What's the price point? And if they think, well, this is good quality and the price point is very competitive, then the next thing they're going to be saying is, are you meeting the food safety standards? That's where we come in. It's not that first part. And I know what you want, and there are entities out there that do that. But price, yeah, we like the price, we like the quality. Are you reliable? Can you ship? You say you'll ship it. Will you ship it? Will it arrive if we order from you? Yes, yes, yes. But what about your compliance with the requirements, the regulation, the food safety part? If you get through the first steps, then that's where we would help you. Not sort of introductions to Costco. And I understand exactly what you're after. Yes, thoughts on that?
Yeah. So exactly to expand to what David said. Also the confidence and liking and knowledge of the product. So for example, this is where we come into picture where whenever Costco's and Walmarts are at the point where they have checked everything that you are good, your product is good, and cost is good. Next step is, are you not in any FDA warning letter? What is that whole sector of the products you supply? How many similar products are on the import alert, or was there any problem? So the confidence in the product from India has to be there as well. So sir, it's really it's all complements each other. Like if you win the stages of approval of the product, but if similar products or this region or India is known for, it shows up on the database as a refusal, that will avoid Costco to come to you. Then they will want to find somewhere where it's already successfully. There is a good history of the supply chain from that region, that product specific from that country. This is where we come from. So we wanted to
Another part to that is if you're thinking of exporting, and one of the messages that I've tried to convey is there are things that you need to put in place. And one of the things that we do is somebody may say, we'd like to export. Are we good to do that? Are we okay? Are we compliant? What do we need to do to export? That's the sort of, you just understand, well, my programs are great. I'm in good shape. And then if you are having conversations with agents or brokers in the US, you can say, we've had our programs assessed by a third party. And you say, we're compliant with the Food Safety Modernization Act. So you say the right words, and they'll say, oh, wow, these guys know what they're talking about. Now that's just the food safety part of it. And I realize there's a whole business piece of it, and there's a marketing piece, and there's a sales piece, which it all has to come together. But if your food safety systems are not right, and you get the buying part right, which is unfortunately what sometimes happens, is they get the buying part right, they ship product, the FDA says, oh, this is a new company, we better inspect it. And they stop the shipment and they inspect it and they find a problem, then you're in a bunch of trouble. So it all has to come together as one. And I totally understand what you're saying. And we're a piece of it, but I don't want to convey, we can get you sales at Costco. That's not what we do. But if you don't get the first part right, with safety, you won't get into Costco. So that we can help you with. Any other questions or thoughts or comments?
So what I understand is we have got our own manufacturing setup,
Yep.
right? As per our regulations, FDA Gujarat, FDA India, right? But you will help us to set up and develop according to compliances required by US FDA.
Right.
Right. At that point, you will help us. Right. Okay. So on that basis, then Costco or Walmart or they will. Then it is again a different story for us to negotiate with them, to talk with them, to pitch our product with them. That is a different story.
Yes.
Right. But to develop a particular setup that is as per the requirement of US FDA, there you will help us.
Yes.
That is what I.
And you're right.
Yes.
Yes, you are right.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, sir. I worked in Walmart for 7 years. Hello?
I worked in Walmart as a food safety manager for 7 years, and I know how important it is for the buyers to get their foot in the door. But again, even when buyers will be going so far ahead with negotiating everything, they will call us, food safety people, to vet it through the requirements. And that's where sometimes buyer is very eager to take the product, but if the food safety people don't like the controls and the hazard analysis, the proper documentation or proper process is not demonstrated from the suppliers, they can say no. So this is what we used to do.
Okay. Yeah. Understood.
In my talk, I spoke about foreign supplier verification program. Remember?
Yeah.
When you start out, there's going to be somebody in the United States who is importing your product, even if it's a small amount. And it may not be Costco, it may be some small company. They have the responsibility in the US to make sure you're following all these regulatory requirements. So they take that responsibility seriously, and FDA inspects them. So when you import the food, there'll be somebody who, in the US, who will be doing the foreign supply verification program. And their job is to look at your programs and say, are you compliant? And if the answer is no, then you're not going to be able to export. So that's where we come in. And as a starting point, one of the things, we have a team in India. And if you're thinking of exporting products, is we can look at your programs, your basic programs, and say, yeah, you're really close, but there's a few little things you need to do, or you're miles away, and here's what you've got to do. So you have a better sense as to whether you're there already, or you're close, or you've got a lot of work to do. And we can tell you what you need to do. And then it becomes a business decision. It's like, yes, I want to do this, because the margins are there and the market is there for me. Or it's like, no, I don't want to do it. And I understand that. It's not, we don't want to go that extra mile. But that's where you kind of start to see, are you in good shape to export? And it probably won't be to Costco and Walmart right out of the gate. That's just not the way it works. But those companies, once you're in there with brokers, for example, who are easier to work with, and then it grows from there. And I don't, another general comment, which is just from doing this work for decades, is, and this is a comment about India. When I was at the FDA, there was a lot of imported food from China that was coming into the United States. And there were a lot of problems with Chinese food. And the American consumer has started to say, we don't trust China. We don't trust Chinese goods. That is not the case with India. Not at all. And I think Americans trust India. And my prediction is 10 years from now, this country will be exporting a lot more food to the United States. Now, we don't grow spices. The things we don't grow, things you grow, things you do, and you're very good at it. And I think you can really build off that. And I honestly believe that India will become a much bigger powerhouse for food in the United States in the next decade. And going back to our new president, he's all about that. Just before we came over here, he and Modi met. And they were all about working together. We're in a good environment to make this work. You've got a receptive president in the United States. You've got a prime minister here in India who wants to make this happen. Things could not be, I think, more aligned to give this a shot. And I think it's only going to grow. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have a team here. Because I think we can help you and make you successful. So, yeah. No, other points, questions?
Yeah, there is question.
Do you provide services to the only food industry or some other industries which are aligned with the food, like food packaging and cosmetics?
We'll do dietary supplements, nutraceuticals, that yes, we can help with that. Cosmetics, a little bit. Pharmaceuticals, no. Medical devices, no. But it's mainly food is what we're experts in.
Good evening, I am Rajesh Rabadia from Spice Nest Company. We are a manufacturer of the garlic paste, ginger paste and so many vegetable paste and pulp. When we are exporting garlic paste, ginger paste, there is nothing problem in US FDA. But when we are exporting the tamarind paste, tamarind concentrate, at that time sometimes they keep in hold. So my request to you, if there is any specific guidelines for tamarind concentrate or tamarind paste in US FDA, you can guide us.
That is a really good question, and I say stand here tonight. I don't know, but we can find out. Do you know?
Yeah. So tamarind is already highlighted by so many import alerts. So when FDA see a series of similar product coming with the filth, mostly filth.
Yes, yes.
Right, it's mostly filth because it's coming from agriculture commodity, and then it gets made, the stack is made or paste is made with the either some processing or minimal processing. So when you have minimal processing and majority of the, as per database, tamarind is one of the highlighted one from FDA. So when this happens, yeah, most likely any similar product gets checked as compared to your tamarind garlic paste and ginger paste. And in these ginger paste and garlic paste are like if you're processing in a heat thermal process, that is expected to be more cleaner and more, it's not like the raw making of tamarind paste, right? So there are two different things. So in terms of how can, what you can do differently is to actually make the process more cleaner, more tighter for your product. And you should have your food safety plan actually taking this into account. One of the hazard analysis characteristic is what is the risk of the product, like how this product is being seen at the regulatory level. Like is this product being checked more often because there are so many higher percentage of that is the filth. So how a smart hazard analysis will dictate that vulnerability of that product, and that will determine you to put more tighter controls. If you continue to have the problem, then we can help to actually look into the process and have you verify that the process is good and write a petition, FDA petition on your behalf. So there are so many things can be done. It's all about the product itself, the characteristics itself right now. Very good questions. Anyone else?
Any other questions?
You have?
Well, if not, thank you again for coming. Thank you so much for the questions. And the interest, and it's a privilege and an honor to be with you. So we really appreciate it, and look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you for coming, and I would like to thank Dr. David for making a point to come here. He's a very busy man. We are working in so many countries, and I really appreciate his support to us and giving this, like, he believed in that vision, and that's why he's here. And Alize Acheson with him as the right hand support of David. So thank you very much. To give a round of applause to them. We have planned to have dinner with all of you. Please do not leave without having dinner. So that would be a good time to socialize and talk more. I can talk in Hindi, Punjabi, whatever that time. So we'll have a good time. Before that, why not we can have a group photo?
Yeah.
All right.